Shakespeare, unlike Spenser, is not necessarily out to become the great English poet. He's not trying to create a programmatic national literature where you can point to this as like, this is the essence of being English. He just happens to be English and an artist. There's a good deal of patriotism here from time to time, though there are sometimes jokes too. This is a play in which we send our hero, Hamlet, to England to get killed because in this play, the English are just the subject, the hapless subjects of the Danes. That hasn't been true for a while. Shakespeare is an innovator and a master of a literary form that evolved during his lifetime. The English language is going through a lot of changes of literary language during Shakespeare's generation, but so is this kind of theater. The first permanent things that we would call theaters were built in London during Shakespeare's childhood. They are a new thing. There had been medieval professional actors. Most of medieval theater in England had been a kind of folk drama, an amateur drama done on religious holidays by your neighbors. In fact, the Miller's Tale and the Miller's Prologue make several references to these Bible plays. John the carpenter hasn't read the Bible. He's seen the Bible plays, so he's thinking a lot about characters don't really appear in the Bible, like Noah's wife. Noah's wife, not big in the book of Genesis, huge hit in English folk drama of the Middle Ages. Shakespeare, the first permanent theaters that are just for plays get built in the 1560s and 1570s while Shakespeare's growing up. One of the pioneer theater builders is an actor named James Burbage, whose son, Richard Burbage, is going to be Shakespeare's key acting partner, Shakespeare's star actor, who is going to play Hamlet. That playhouse was so old school, it was literally called The Theater. You wish you'd picked the name. They were early adopters. Professional English drama evolves rapidly through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and begins to hit its stride and get a recognizable form during Shakespeare's mid-20s, where it evolves into a primarily iambic pentameter blank verse drama, where there is a basic setup of dialogue, soliloquies, and asides. Soliloquies where no one is on stage but the actor speaking. Asides where the actor speaks to the audience, not to the fellow actors. Doubling scene changes. This is a hybrid form at the time. It takes on certain aspects from Greek and Roman drama, which people like Shakespeare would have read in grammar school. Actually, Roman drama is what they read in grammar school. He read the tragedian Seneca. He read the comedians Plautus and Terence, all three of whom get name checked in this play by Polonius. He hasn't read any Sophocles or Euripides. He doesn't read a lot of Greek, but he's read the Jesus out of Seneca. This is a very Senecan play, or a Seneca 2.0 or 3.0. But it's also full of folk things like the clown. There is always a clown in Shakespeare's drama. No matter what happens here, it's the gravedigger. What's funnier than a gravedigger? We'll get to that. Hey, I'm a clown here to dig the grave. The clown, who doesn't speak in verse, who doesn't fully inhabit the imaginary world of the play, doesn't really seem to be from there, but seems to be from the neighborhood in London where they're performing. And who makes a lot of jokes, who's allowed to improvise to some degree. Hamlet has himself, the character, has complaints about that. And who kind of sings and dances. All of Shakespeare's plays end with a jig, a comic dance with some narrative performed and led by the company clown. We have lost those jigs. Even Hamlet? Yes, even Hamlet. What happens after the whole Danish royal family's dead? The clown dances. Always, always. There is never a tragedy without a clown, And here I want to point something out about Shakespeare. There is never a tragedy without jokes. Both the clown, because you got to have a clown, he can't get the day off. Can't give him the day off, then he'll never work. He never writes a comedy, or he very seldom writes a comedy without some strange of genuine, painful emotion. Even if it comes by very quickly, even if we like to edit it out of performance, there will be moments that touch upon real human pain that moves the characters along their arc. You might notice Hamlet himself jokes a lot. Our most famous tragic character is extremely funny. Shakespeare believes in genre, but Shakespeare follows genre rules exactingly the same way he follows versification rules. It ends according to the rules. His iambic pentameter tends to substitute a lot on the way to the end, but ends pretty firmly iambic. His tragedies, they end like tragedies. You can't mistake this for a comedy. No one's getting married. Wedding bells will not be pealing. Most of the characters you like and almost everyone you didn't like are gone. Nonetheless, there's a lot of joking on the way. Shakespeare's also getting the point where Shakespeare happens, fortunately for him, to inhabit the generation where people are starting to understand how this literary form works and starting to be able to explore it. We know how you put this together. It's a mix of unrhymed verse, some occasional rhyme verse, and prose. You've got a clown, you get these genres, you have these particular stage effects. Now, what can we do with that? Hamlet is an enormously imaginative working through the possibilities of the stage around 1603, 1604. It is also a poet's theater. It has, this is important for us, no scenery as we would imagine scenery. They spend a lot of money on costumes. People are dressed very fancily. They are not dressed typically in historical costumes. They tend to dress like they're Elizabethans or Jacobeans. But the scenery, where's the scenery? The scenery's in the description. These plays are all mobile. He plays them at the Globe Theatre. Hamlet was played early on at the Globe Theatre. He also plays it at court for the Queen and later her successor, the King. They can take it on tour in the provinces and play wherever. This play is very flexible. There are no scene changes. The scene changes with one group of actors walking off the stage and another group walking in. The multiple plots is also a very English theatrical tradition, which is forbidden strictly in Roman and Greek drama, but it's how Shakespeare moves the story along. It will feel familiar to you because it's how movies work. You cut to another scene and you know we've moved in time and space. Fine. Shakespeare is telling a story. Hamlet is already a retelling. There is an older Hamlet which we have lost entirely. We don't know what was in it exactly, except a ghost and Hamlet and revenge. You may find or read people telling you very confidently what that older play was like. They don't actually know. The evidence is missing. But this play, from somewhere in the middle of Shakespeare's career, is some form of retooling of an earlier play about Hamlet. It's a retooling of earlier chronicle history stories about Hamlet. It is a story, and it's also a reworking of a genre. There's a revenge tragedy genre. What this play does is stop and think through the human element of the revenge tragedy. Revenge tragedies tend to have very simple motives. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Boom. Hamlet is, I'm Inigo Montoya. He killed my father. Prepare to die. All that stops Inigo Montoya from revenge is plot. He can't. Why hasn't he killed the six-fingered man? He can't find him. Why hasn't he killed him after he found him? Six-fingered man ran away. Inigo Montoya has to chase him. all the obstacles to Inigo Montoya, and I'm doing Princess Bride jokes if you don't know that movie, all of Inigo Montoya's obstacles to his revenge are simply physical. They get in the way, and they say nothing really about who Inigo Montoya is. Hamlet Hamlet lives in the house with the man who killed his father. What is stopping him from taking his revenge is the nature of revenge, is who Hamlet is, and what he's really being asked to do. There are a great many wonderful scholars who will say, especially old Tweety scholars, who will say, oh, Hamlet, I don't know why Hamlet would, I would cap that son of a, right? Like T.S. Eliot will say, brilliant critic and brilliant poet, T.S. Eliot talks about, yes, well, why does he delay? He should just cap him. Like T.S. Eliot is going to take bloody revenge right away. The delay only makes sense if you ask yourself what it means. Hey, maybe I don't want to be a murderer. Maybe being a murderer, even if I think I ought to, is difficult. Maybe killing somebody is a fairly heavy idea. This play slows down the revenge plot and makes it about character, about the emotional experience. It makes it about the space between plot events. Hamlet sometimes moves very quickly. He kills Polonius through that arras swiftly on impulse, but reflex. But instead of everything happening on the plot beats and being about, hey, I've got to get the key that unlocks the thing, it is about emotional responses and about who Hamlet is and what it is like to have this experience. Instead of rushing along so quickly that we don't think about anything except how to get that sucker, we move slowly enough to share our protagonist's doubts and fears and anxieties, and the fact that this is something one might legitimately be ambivalent about. Why doesn't he kill the king? He doesn't want to go to hell? Because it's a crime? Because it's regicide? Because it's murder? Because he is a believing Christian? His language is that of a believing Christian, and Christianity's teaching of revenge is, don't do it? I'm sorry. Let me go through the Protestant and Catholic versions of revenge. Here's the Catholic version of revenge. Don't do it. Here's the Protestant version. Don't do it. It's pretty simple. Even the Protestants and Catholics who are currently spilling each other's blood in 17th century in Europe agree. Murdering people to get back at them is a bad thing to do. T.S. Eliot, as we know, is an extremely vengeful person, an O.G. Crip, as it were. No, not a physically dangerous person. Hamlet is about taking a genre that already exists that's a kind of a junk genre. It's kind of a popcorn kind of thing, revenge tragedy, and making it something that is more human and that explores what would it really mean. Instead of just behaving like a character in a book, Hamlet behaves like an actual person who's confronted with the choices that typically come to characters in books. It's going to end the way genre always makes it end, but Hamlet is about going for the ride.